question for you. Are you feeling a little distracted, maybe a little disorganized, fidgety, or perhaps you're unable to concentrate? Well, you could have adult attention deficit disorder, and you might not even realize it. Now, it's commonly thought of as a childhood disorder, but it is affecting more adults. And here now with some clues and some answers for us, family and child development expert, Dr. Gail Gross. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we were just sitting here chatting about this, and it seems that when I was growing up, we didn't really hear about ADD. Why are we hearing so much more about it now, and what is it?
Well, you know, we didn't understand it before, and we didn't even know how to diagnose it. And when I was working on my first master's thesis, we called it minimal brain damage and dyslexia. And the way we came about finding it really was through eye doctors. They were giving kids eye tests, and they noticed that children had mirror vision, or they skip a word or a letter on the chart. And so that's how we sort of got a way of diagnosing it in the beginning. And now, with the onset of machines like the MRI, we can see parts of the brain that aren't getting enough of the right chemistry in the right way, like dopamine and norepinephrine. And so we now can see what's going on in the brain.
So it's a chemical...
It's a chemical problem in the brain, really. And the way we can approach it now is with behavior modification, therapy, and medication, if you have it and you need it.
And interestingly, we were talking in the break about how this was originally thought to be something that was a survival mechanism, and today the word disorder really bothers me because I think that it has a negative connotation that really shouldn't be there.
Well, early man, primitive man, had this built into him for survival. If you were a caveman and you were by the edge of the river and you were getting a drink or looking for a fish, and you had to listen for somebody clubbing you on the head, or a tiger in the back,
so multitasking was a good thing,
or your wife in the cave yelling, "Get me something for the baby." You know, you had to multitask, and that was a survival mechanism. But today, you're sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, and you have to sit still. We're having a conversation. We have to focus in a different way. You know, man's brain developed over time in a different way.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the symptoms, because we've got something here on the screen that I want to share with people. One of them, of course, is constant distraction. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, the inability to focus is really a very good sign of ADD and ADHD. So you can't concentrate very well, you're easily therefore distracted. In fact, early on, one of the ways we dealt with children with ADD and adults with ADD and ADHD was to put them in an environment that didn't have many windows, didn't have a lot of color on the wall, didn't have a lot of distractions.
So they couldn't be distracted.
So we limited their environment, enhanced their health, and avoided their problem by focusing them and taking away distractions.
What about the tendency to put things off? I'll do it later. I don't want to do it right now.
All the same thing. We have, that's a very good sign of ADD and ADHD, because again, you have impulsive behavior, you can't focus, you can't concentrate, you can't delay gratification, so you're always putting things off, you're late for work, you're late for school.
And that also means that it's more difficult for you to complete a task as well, right?
You're out of time. In a sense, you're out of time. I try to explain it, as I told you earlier, it's like somebody who's up to bat in a baseball game, and the pitcher has been throwing fastballs to everybody, but all of a sudden he starts throwing slow balls to you, and you're expecting that fastball, and you're off, and you're off, and you're off. Your timing is off. And that's really a good example of what ADD and ADHD is. Your timing is off. And what happens is, we, as adults, we self-medicate and we accommodate. We learn to drink coffee or melatonin. We take melatonin, or we eat sweets, things to stimulate us in the short run, and the stimulation actually slows us down in our brains if we have the problem.
Everybody, of course, is becoming more and more aware of this, but people might not understand or realize that there are a lot of famous people that they probably would never think of who have ADD or ADHD.
And one that I interviewed, I did a show for PBS. I can say
We've
that
got
here,
Nancy Glass in the screen right
Nancy
here.
was my producer for PBS, and I did a show on ADD and ADHD, and I interviewed her. her. And at first she wasn't that comfortable with it because nobody wants to be labeled, oh, that person who has. But I really had a very good interview with her, and in the interview she explained it this way. She said, it's as if you have static going on all the time, and that's what is that really is what hurts your focusing. You're multitasking, you're hearing things all over the place. But if you can find a career that helps you use that static to your benefit, for example, being a producer, where you have to be all over the place all the time.
It helps.
It helps.
Because you're able to multitask.
It's your skill.
Okay, well, I know you're going to stay with us, and we appreciate that. When we come back, we'll meet a woman who struggled with adult attention deficit disorder, and we'll find out how she's coping. We'll be right back.
Coming up, ADD. It doesn't affect only kids. Our closer look at adult attention deficit disorder continues.
And welcome back. Dr. Gail Gross is here with us again as we continue our look at attention deficit disorder. It's one of the most common mental disorders in children, but many adults don't find out they have the condition until they're diagnosed as adults, and this was the case for our next two guests. We're joined now by Sharon Stinson and Cynthia Tilford. Thank you both for being here today. Sharon, I'm going to start with you. You were diagnosed as an adult. How has your diagnosis of ADD impacted your life?
It's actually it's given me a framework so that I can understand why my brain works the way it does. I've learned that I have to put structure in my life, that it's not that I don't want to finish tasks, it's not that I don't want to get a project completed, but I need to work with the way my brain works. I have to set aside specific amounts of time. I have to, create a structure. I lost a significant amount of weight in my past, and I did that by creating a structure of
And you did this. That's okay. Go ahead and talk about your weight loss. And one of the ways that we're looking at a photo now of you, when you said you were you stopped counting you were very frank. You said you stopped counting at 282 pounds.
Yes.
Okay. And then you decided you had to do something. One of the things that you did was you found a form of exercise. Here you are teaching a NIA class. For those people who don't know what NIA is, it's a free form of movement within a structure. I've done it before. I love it. It's very liberating. What is it about NIA that struck a chord with you and made an impact in terms of your ADD diagnosis?
Well, it's a perfect fit for somebody with ADD because there is a structure to it. There are steps, there are songs, there are routines, but within that, every person gets to choose how big are my arms going to be, how far am I going to step out, how far am I going to sink, how far am I going to rise. So there's complete freedom within a structure, and that's what I think most, at least I found with me, that's the structure I need within ADD.
Cynthia, does this sound familiar to you?
Very, very much so. I have a support group for adults with attention deficit disorder, and one of the things that I tell the people that come to our group is that routine and structure are your friend. People with ADD often don't want to hear that because they don't like working within a structure or a framework. But the more that you can build that into your life, the less you have to think about, the fewer decisions you have to make, the more it frees you up to do the things that you want to do in your life.
Do you find in your support group that people are reluctant to speak publicly about the fact that they've been diagnosed with ADD?
Absolutely. There's still very much a stigma attached to any kind of diagnosis that has to do with how your brain works. The joke in our chapter and around my house is that if you know me and you don't know I have ADD, then you're the one not paying attention.
I'm going to bring Dr. Gross back into this conversation because we were saying that really everybody has some form of ADD.
That's
correct?
Right. And in a certain way, we all have this, and stress will bring it out. You'll have a memory lapse, or you lose some short-term memory, or if you're tone deaf, it doesn't affect your life. But if you can't read, or if you're having trouble understanding words, or any of these other things, then it affects your life. And what you've done, Cindy, and what you've done, Sharon, is exactly what you should do. You should use your skills, the things that ADD offers you, which is thinking outside the box, being creative, which is why this kind of dance exercise really is appealing, because it allows for your creativity and also structuring your world, understanding how you are so that you can accommodate, create a space and a world that accommodates. But some of our most brilliant people, and that's a byproduct of ADD, when we notice ADD and ADHD, people with this disorder often are extremely intelligent. So they're your greatest leaders, your presidents and your painters and your sculptors and your poets, because they are creative, and it's a certain intellectual curiosity, a certain interest, a certain thinking outside the box that is actually also a part of ADD, but emotional problems come along with it. And I want to be sure to say this because children can't follow instructions, so when they're playing games, they're zoning out, not paying attention, so they get in trouble with other children. They have a low impulse control, so they might have temper tantrums.
And a lot of times also, there's also, of course, there's treatment involved here.
And that's what's really important.
And I want to ask the ladies here, Sharon, what kind of treatment are you taking as a result of your ADD?
I currently, in the past, I've taken medication. I took medication for about a decade, but I never did much behavioral modification along with it, and I found it not successful. Right now, I'm just doing behavioral modification, and I find that that's enough. I'm able to create enough structure in my life that I'm able to treat
it. So that's making a difference for you. Cynthia, what about you?
Well, I am currently taking medication. I think I've tried every single medication that's been on the market, and not every medication works for every person. But I also do have to work with behavioral modification, building structure into my life. Associating with people who know how to dot the I's and cross the T's, complement my particular skill sets, really adds to my effectiveness at home and at work.
Fantastic. I want to thank both of you for being here and speaking so openly about this. And the takeaway here, very quickly, Dr. Gail, in 10 seconds or less, the takeaway here for people is to understand
their problem, go for help, get a great doctor who can diagnose you, and then support systems, medication if you need it, definitely behavior modification, and definitely therapy, because this is a multitask problem, and we need to multitask to get to the solution. Let me say hi to my mom.
Okay.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Who's been sick, and Della, who's caring for her.
Thanks, Dr. Gross. And if you'd like some more information on adult ADD, you can go to the Attention Deficit Disorders website at adda-sr.org. And we'll be right back.